we made progress in the sense that we identified potential areas of agreement, but there remain some big areas of disagreement. So we're still a long ways off. I mean, we're not at the precipice of a peace agreement. We're not at the edge of one, but I do think progress was made.
That was Secretary of State Marco Rubio yesterday. We're going to preview a consequential meeting today at the White House, man, and it's going to be a significant one between President Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky, plus a lot of members of European governments. Then that's following, of course, the Friday summit meeting between Trump and Vladimir Putin. You sent me a fascinating statement last night from a source close to a European leader saying that this is going to be one of the most significant meetings regarding the future of Europe in quite some time.
Yeah, Zelensky bringing reinforcements. Leaders from many European heads of state, head of the EU, representatives of NATO, the UK, France, Germany, the list goes on, being there to be with him as he meets with President Trump 2 days after Trump met with Putin in Alaska. Some concerns, some hopeful signs coming out of that meeting, some other worrisome signs coming out of that meeting. And the European leaders there want to be with Zelensky as he makes his case and tries to avoid a repeat of what we saw at his last time in the Oval Office, that blow up back in February.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens. We don't know. There are a lot of people afterwards saying a lot of different things on both sides, and both sides don't know what's going to exactly happen today. I do like the fact that the leaders are there, the European leaders there. And, Caddy, when you have somebody like the Prime Minister of Italy, who is considered to be far right, who some people have considered to be ultra-nationalist, actually coming to the meeting and talking about the importance of a security agreement, and something that we're hearing and again, everybody's been saying it's not going to be NATO. It's not going to be NATO for the most part, has been the belief. But when you have the Italian Prime Minister saying the starting point of the proposal is the definition of a collective security provision. Well, once you start talking about that, then you can start negotiating and haggling over lines, because that's what Poland, that's what Latvia, that's what Lithuania, that's what Estonia and all of those countries are looking at. Is there a security guarantee? If there's a security guarantee, then yes, then we can start talking about where we draw the lines.
Yeah, when Giorgia Meloni was elected, there was some concern in Europe that she might be more pro-Russian, less supportive of Ukraine. She's been anything but really has been a defender of Ukrainian independence. And having her in that meeting is key. Of course, Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, is also going to be there, another person that Donald Trump has a good relationship with. This European contingent has been chosen to have people in the room with Donald Trump who he feels comfortable with, who he has an affinity with. And I think that's Europe's way of saying, OK, let's do whatever it takes. We understand Donald Trump now. We understand the American concerns. We will do whatever it takes to present a united front on behalf of Ukraine without alienating the American president. So President Trump and Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky are set to meet at the White House today. Zelensky announced his trip to the U.S. shortly after Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin wrapped up their summit in Alaska on Friday. The prospect of a ceasefire didn't come up, but following that meeting, Trump promised a, quote, peace agreement to end the war in Ukraine. Trump is also offering security guarantees for Ukraine. That's a shift from his earlier position that only Europe should help protect Kyiv after the war. Last night on Truth Social, Trump ramped up the pressure on Ukraine, writing that Zelensky can end the war with Russia almost immediately if he wants to, or he can continue to fight. Trump also suggested that Ukraine should not retake the Russian-occupied territory of Crimea, nor should it join NATO. Zelensky responded to that in a social media post of his own, writing in part, quote, peace must be lasting, not like it was years ago when Ukraine was forced to give up Crimea and part of our east, part of Donbass, and Putin simply used it as a springboard for a new attack, or when Ukraine was given so-called security guarantees in 1994, but they didn't work. Now, several European and NATO leaders are expected to attend today's meeting in Washington, as we said. They include the President of the European Commission, the Chancellor of Germany, the Prime Ministers of the United Kingdom and of Italy, the Presidents of France and of Finland, and the NATO Secretary General, Joe. So, I mean, this is, I've not seen, in all the years that I have covered American politics, I have not seen a delegation like this from Europe, not even at the outbreak of the Iraq War, come to Washington, come to the White House to make Europe's case for peace and security in Europe.
Well, and it is very significant, and some interesting things are obviously happening between the United States and Europe, even in the wild 6, 7, 8 months that we've seen tariff threats going back and forth. But you do have Donald Trump having close relations with Keir Starmer, with the new chancellor of Germany, obviously with Meloni in Italy. So we'll see exactly what happens there. Of course, all those European leaders are talking about the need for a security guarantee. The White House on background talking about the need for security guarantees as well. Let's bring in right now NBC News national affairs analyst and a partner and chief political columnist at Puck, John Heilemann, also columnist for the Washington Post, David Ignatius, and Rogers Chair in the American Presidency at Vanderbilt University historian John Meacham. David Ignatius, a lot of moving parts today. It does appear from what we've heard over the weekend and what we heard last night and read last night on Truth Social, that whatever security agreement there will be, whatever security arrangement involving Americans will be, it won't be a formal NATO membership. Not much of a surprise there. Perhaps a surprise, though, that he was tweeting about it on Truth Social last night before the meeting.
So, Joe, I think President Zelensky of Ukraine faces an agonizing choice today because he's going to come to the White House, and I think President Trump is going to lay out the parameters of the deal that emerged. They didn't talk about it in Alaska. And that deal is likely to require Zelensky to give up territory that he now holds in these key disputed provinces of Donetsk and Luhansk. And that's enormously painful for Zelensky. Ukrainians have been fighting and dying. People like who go to Kyiv see in the St. George's Cathedral Square the photographs of people who've been dying in Donetsk since 2014. So to give that up is extremely painful. But on the other hand, it does appear that the U.S. is finally, after months of back and forth on this, prepared to offer serious security guarantees, backing up the European force that will be the principal guarantor of Ukrainian security. That's a big shift. So it comes down to Zelensky to decide, is this land for peace deal something that's better for Ukraine, something that I can sell to the Ukrainian people? The indications are that he may balk at it, but, you know, Trump's going to lean hard on him. And I think the Europeans are coming really to say, we are with you, brother president. We're here to support you if you decide that the security guarantees are sufficient to protect Ukraine, to keep it an independent country, not capitulating to Russia, but taking its own course toward Europe.
Let's bring in right now from Warsaw, Poland, Mark Brzezinski. He's the most recent U.S. ambassador to Poland, who also served in the White House and the National Security Council. And as U.S. ambassador to Sweden, he's now CEO of Brzezinski Global Strategies, LLC. Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for being with us. You were on the front lines of this, obviously, after the invasion, and certainly spoke to all interested parties in this. I'm curious your thoughts about what happened over the weekend, the meeting today in the White House, and what the people of Poland, and let's just expand that out, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, what people in the East are looking at and what they want to see out of this White House meeting today.
Joe, greetings from a part of the world that is very anxious and uncertain about what is happening at the White House today. From Central and Eastern Europe, what looks like is going to happen at the White House today is the diplomatic version of a showdown at the OK Corral, and so much is at stake. It could be either a rollback of the gains made in terms of democracy and the free market in Central and Eastern Europe, spearheaded by President Ronald Reagan, or alternatively, a ceasefire could be brokered by President Trump that stops a war that has already claimed 1 million casualties. The opportunity that President Trump has today, and we all want President Trump to be successful, regardless of who you supported, he is now the U.S. president, and in his hands is the possibility of peace to stop a war that has claimed over 1 million casualties. But he has an opportunity not just to convince Ukraine to somehow work in alignment with him to achieve a ceasefire, but also President Trump can speak directly to the top European leadership regarding what he expects them to contribute to keep that peace and ultimately to rebuild Ukraine. Europe has a lot of resources, and Trump would be within his rights to say, Ukraine is not just an American problem, it is an international problem, and especially it's a European problem, and it will be important for the Europeans to share in and join in with us on this.
So, Mr. Ambassador, there's been suggestions of American security guarantees. They're very vague. We don't know what they are just yet. There's some concern out of Europe, and please speak to this, that yesterday, for instance, Secretary of State Rubio was asked what concessions Russia would need to make. He didn't want to elicit any. But yes, last night, President Trump did already give a couple that Ukraine would have to, not go back to Crimea, not join NATO. So there is a sense, it's safe to say, that if the European leaders thought Friday was the summit in Alaska with Putin was a home run, they wouldn't need to necessarily be there with Zelensky in Washington today. So speak to us on about the continent there, the level of anxiety. That today's a real opportunity, to be sure. But what are some of the worries as Zelensky heads back to the White House?
Sure. Well, American security guarantees are the holy grail in all this. And I say this having served as ambassador in Poland, which literally was in the crosshairs of Putin because it was delivering the weapons to the Ukrainians that were using to defend themselves against Russia. And the security guarantee, the Article 5 commitment here in Poland, worked. Without that Article 5 guarantee, I can only imagine what Poland and the Baltic states and Romania would have faced. So Article 5, the fact that Witkoff and Rubio, negotiator Witkoff and Secretary Rubio are talking about it, is truly the crux of a deal that the Ukrainians could buy into. And a security guarantee would have to keep the peace on both sides. This has been a terribly bloody war with casualties massive on both sides. And over the next few years, there will be feelings of retribution and passion for retribution on both sides. The Russia-Ukraine conflict has historical dimensions that if President Trump can broker a ceasefire very soon, would be worthy of celebration because it is so historically rooted and so recently bloody. And to put something in place that stops that would be worthy of accolades. And he has an opportunity today.
All right. Former U.S. Ambassador to both Sweden and Poland, Mark Brzezinski, thank you so much for your time. We greatly appreciate it.